Did you experience any of that?
Oh, sure, but I didn't care what you said to me. As long as it didn't bother me, it didn't bother me.
I feel like that first job as a caddy gave you?
It gave me everything I own. If I didn't know how to do caddying, I never would have been a golfer, and I would have made the little money I made, you know?
Jim Dent called 5 golfers absolutely unforgivable. Not because they cheated, not because they were criminals, but because of how they treated him when he was just a kid carrying their bags. This is the story of Frank Stranahan, Bob Goalby, Marty Furgol, Bob Rosburg, and Walker Inman. 5 men who tested the patience of a teenage caddy in ways that would shape a Hall of Fame career. Before Jim Dent became Big Boy, the legend who could launch a golf ball over 300 yards with a wooden driver, he was just another black teenager in Augusta, Georgia, trying to survive. Born in 1939, Dent grew up in the literal shadow of Augusta National Golf Club. He could see the manicured fairways from his family farm. He could watch the wealthy white golfers play a game he was forbidden to join, but he could carry their bags. That was allowed. The caddy yard in 1950s Augusta was not a job. It was an economy. It was a school. It was a test of character administered daily by men who held all the power. The caddy master decided who got the loops. The players decided how much you got paid, and the caddies, mostly young black men like Dent, were expected to be invisible. You could read a green better than the player. You could know the course better than anyone, but you could not have an opinion. You could not show frustration. You definitely could not complain. This was the world Jim Dent entered as a teenager, a world where hierarchy was absolute and your humanity was negotiable. The wealthy white golfers held every card. They could praise you one moment and humiliate you the next. They could pay you well or stiff you completely, and you had no recourse, no union, no complaint department, just the understanding that if you wanted to eat, you smiled and carried the bag. This power imbalance created a unique kind of pressure. It forced young men like Dent to develop emotional armor, to watch everything, to learn from everyone, even the people who made your life difficult. Dent was orphaned by age 12. His Aunt Mary Benton raised him. She worked as a housekeeper, and she did not trust the golf course. When 14-year-old Jim told her he wanted to caddy, she warned him, "If you learn how to caddy, you are going to learn how to gamble." She was right. The caddy yard had dice games and card tables. Dent later admitted the second thing he learned after reading greens was shooting dice, but the money mattered. A loop might pay a few dollars. For a kid in Augusta, that was rent money. That was food money. That was eventually the $30 Dent needed to buy his first set of clubs from Henry Avery at Augusta Country Club. But the money came with a cost, and that cost was dealing with men like Frank Stranahan. Frank Stranahan was the heir to the champion spark plug fortune. He did not need golf for money. He played because he was obsessed. Stranahan was the first fitness freak of professional golf. He traveled with a portable weight set. He followed strict diets before anyone knew what sports science was. He was disciplined to the point of madness, and he had one rule for his caddies that drove Jim Dent absolutely crazy. You could not touch the grips of his clubs. Think about that for a second. Your job as a caddy is to hand clubs to the player. The normal way to do this is to grab the grip, pull the club from the bag, and hand it over. Stranahan forbade this. He believed the oils and sweat from a caddy's hands would ruin the leather grips. He thought it would destroy his feel. So Dent had to grab the steel shaft or the club head itself. He had to maneuver each club like it was made of glass. Pulling a 7-iron from a crowded bag without touching the grip is hard. Putting it back in without your fingers brushing the leather is even harder. For a young black caddy in the Jim Crow South, this rule carried weight beyond logistics. It sent a message. Your hands are dirty. Your touch contaminates. Stranahan treated his equipment with more care than he treated the human being carrying it. Whether he meant it racially or not does not matter. The effect was the same. Dent felt like he was unclean. He was country strong. He was pragmatic. And watching a rich man worry about microscopic oil transfers on leather while Dent worried about survival taught him something important. Perfectionism is a prison. Later in his career, Dent never fussed over his equipment. He did not weigh his clubs to the gram. He just played. Then there was Bob Goalby. Goalby is remembered by history as the winner of the 1968 Masters. But before that victory, he was known for 2 things: his athleticism and his temper. Goalby was a former college football player. He attacked the golf course with aggression, and when things went wrong, he attacked his caddy. During a round at Augusta, Goalby turned on Dent. He scolded the teenager. He told him he was too temperamental. Let that sink in. Bob Goalby, one of the hottest heads on the PGA Tour, accused his 15-year-old black caddy of being too temperamental. It was projection at its finest. In the power structure of 1950s Augusta, a caddy was not allowed to have a temperament. He was a silent witness. If Dent looked frustrated, it was probably because Goalby was playing poorly, but Goalby could not handle his own emotions. so he blamed the kid carrying his bag. This is a good moment to ask you something. If you were a teenager carrying bags for wealthy adults who blamed you for their mistakes, how would you handle it? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you are not subscribed yet, do that now, because this story gets even stranger. The insult stuck with Dent for decades. To be called temperamental by a man famous for throwing clubs was gaslighting. It was the powerful defining the reality of the powerless. Goalby was allowed to curse. Dent was not even allowed to look unhappy. But here is the twist. Despite this moment, Goalby and Dent became lifelong friends. When Dent joined the senior tour in the late 1980s, the dynamic shifted. They were no longer master and servant. They were competitors. They were peers. They shared stories. They laughed about the old days. The fact that Dent lists Goalby as someone he will never forgive, while also calling him a friend, reveals something important. The Never Forgive title is not about hate. It is about memory. Dent forgave the man, but he refuses to let the act be forgotten. He preserves the memory of the young caddy who had to swallow his pride, and in doing so, he keeps that perspective alive in a world that usually only listens to the player. Marty Furgol was different. He was not angry like Goalby. He was not obsessive like Stranahan. He was superstitious, and his superstitions became Dent's burden. Furgol won 5 PGA Tour events. He was known as the free spirit. That was code for a guy who lived by rules no one else understood. One of those rules involved golf balls. Furgol told Dent you cannot win with a ball over number 7. Any ball stamped with an 8, 9, 10, or 11 was bad luck. So Dent had to manage the ball inventory. He had to constantly check the dimpled spheres, making sure he never handed Furgol a cursed number. If Dent accidentally gave him a number 8 on a crucial tee shot, it would trigger a crisis. The player's confidence would collapse, and it would be the caddy's fault. Dent knew the number on a ball had zero effect on how it flew, but Furgol did not care. He offloaded his anxiety onto a teenager. It was exhausting. It was absurd, and it taught Dent to ignore superstition and trust his talent. Furgol also had advice about smoking. Dent smoked. Most caddies did. It was how you passed the time. Furgol saw this and told him, "Do not smoke, son, because smoke gets in your eyes and you cannot see." He was not talking about lung cancer. He was worried about immediate visual acuity. He thought the drifting smoke would block Dent's ability to track the ball. The quote was also a reference to the popular song "Smoke Gets in Your Eyes," which added a layer of theatrical absurdity to the whole thing. For Dent, being lectured on optics by a man who believed numbers determined destiny was peak absurdity. It represented the patronizing nature of the relationship, the white player imparting nonsensical wisdom to the black caddy, expecting it to be treated as gospel. Furgol meant well, but his neuroses became Jim's job, and that is unforgivable in its own way. Bob Rosburg was not cruel. He was not superstitious. He was just fast. Really fast. And for a 15-year-old kid, that speed was torture. Rosburg was the pro Dent caddied for in his very first Masters tournament in 1956. To be trusted with a bag in a major championship at age 15 was an honor, but it was also a physical nightmare. Rosburg played with a baseball grip, 10 fingers on the club, no interlock, no overlap, and he played fast. He did not take practice swings. He walked to his ball, glanced at the target, and hit it. Then he was moving again. Augusta National is not flat. The walk from the 8th green to the 9th tee is steep. The climb up 18 is brutal. Dent was carrying a heavy leather tour bag loaded with extra equipment, rain gear, and dozens of golf balls. And Rosburg did not wait. Dent had to sprint. He had to calculate yardage on the run. He had to have the right club ready before Rosburg even stopped walking. It was a cardio workout disguised as a golf round. The unforgivable part was not malice. It was obliviousness. Rosburg played his game without thinking about the human logistics of his caddy keeping up. But Dent learned something valuable. He learned that overthinking is the enemy of golf. Rosburg's grip it and rip it mentality resonated with Dent's natural instincts. Later in his career, Dent was known as a fast player. He did not agonize over shots. He absorbed Rosburg's philosophy, even if he resented the 15-year-old version of himself gasping for air on the back nine. The 5th man on the list is Walker Inman. Inman was not colorful, he was not loud, he was not eccentric. He was a serious establishment figure, a respected club professional who eventually ran the program at Scioto Country Club, where Jack Nicklaus learned the game. Inman represented the rigid traditionalist, and for a caddy, that type of player is often the hardest to serve. You can manage a an eccentric like Furgol. You can wait out an angry guy like Goalby, but the traditionalist demands perfection in protocol. The towel must be folded a certain way. The bag must be set down at the correct angle. Silence must be absolute. There is no room for personality. Dent was easygoing. He had a natural warmth. But with Inman, none of that mattered. Inman demanded that Dent be a machine. Dent's inclusion of Inman on his list stems from this rigidity. Inman likely treated the caddy relationship with military strictness. But there is a fascinating twist. Dent later spent time in Ohio and had connections to Scioto. It is probable that Inman's exacting standards eventually opened doors for Dent. Inman may have been a hard taskmaster, but he was also a gatekeeper to the professional world. By enduring Inman's demands, Dent proved he could handle the highest levels of professional decorum. That was a necessary step for a black golfer trying to break into the white establishment of the PGA. So why does Jim Dent call this list the golfers he will never forgive? The answer is complicated, because Jim Dent also said this. I learned that golf can make you do some crazy things. The past was never an anchor for Jim. That quote defines his philosophy. He did not hold grudges. He did not let bitterness weigh him down. So how do you reconcile a list of people you will never forgive with a life philosophy built on letting go? The answer is that the list is not a ledger of hate. It is a performance of memory. In the oral tradition of African American storytelling, and specifically in the culture of the caddy yard, stories about difficult white bosses served a social function. They allowed the caddies to reclaim power by highlighting the absurdity of the people they serve. By naming Stranahan, Goalby, Furgol, Rosburg, and Inman, Dent is not holding a grudge. He is holding court. He is telling the funny, painful, and ridiculous stories of his youth to show how far he came. And the crazy thing is, those 5 men taught him everything he needed to succeed. From Stranahan's grip obsession, Dent learned simplicity. He played with a natural grip and never blamed his equipment. From Goalby's temper, Dent learned to stay calm. He smiled on the course. He realized anger consumes energy that should be used for the swing. From Furgol's superstitions, Dent learned pragmatism. He trusted his eyes and his hands, not the number on a ball. From Rosburg's speed, Dent learned flow. He played without hesitation. And from Inman's rigidity, Dent learned discipline. He knew how to carry himself as a professional, which allowed him to navigate corporate events and sponsor dinners with grace. The 5 golfers Jim Dent will never forgive were his tormentors, but they were also his teachers. And in the strange alchemy of golf, those painful loops in the caddy yard became the foundation of a Hall of Fame career. Dent went on to win 12 times on the senior PGA Tour. He earned over $9 million. He became a legend for his driving distance and his character. And in 2022, he was inducted into the Caddy Hall of Fame. Today, the road leading to Augusta Municipal Golf Course is named Jim Dent Way. It is a permanent marker on the landscape of Augusta. The caddy who was once warned about gambling and scolded for smoking is now the defining icon of the city's public golf heritage. The 5 men on his list have their names on trophies, but Jim Dent has his name on the road that leads to the People's Course. That is poetic justice. So here's my question for you. What do you think about Jim Dent's philosophy? Can you never forgive someone but still move forward without bitterness? Is it possible to honor the pain of the past while refusing to let it define you? Let me know in the comments. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because Jim Dent's legacy is not just about golf. It is about resilience, forgiveness, and the long drive home.